So next up, we have a kind of a discussion going on. So there's going to be a few of us sitting here talking about a topic that I'm just about to announce. And maybe I can just introduce the people that will join. So there's going to be Mo. Mo is our product manager. And maybe just to say a couple of words about him. So he's actually managing eyeo's experimental browser, Adblock browser for Android. And he also manages ad filtering solutions for mobile desktop partners. And he's also managing the ad filtering solutions for networks as well. We'll also be joined by Andre, who everyone has met already from AdGuard, who are so, yeah, I mean, maybe some people know him. They've been very nicely co-hosting with us today, and we'll also be joined by Supermoy, and Supermoy is engineering lead at eyeo. Probably, maybe you can say a word about yourself or introduce yourself
with a microphone, please.
There you go.
Should have started it more. So, hi everybody. I'm Shubhamoy. Feel free to shorten it. People often do. So I'm the engineering lead for the team that maintains browser ad filtering solutions here at eyeo. It's a bit different. It's the one that you don't hear so much about. It's not an extension. It's you could think about it as a giant patch on top of Chromium that offers ad filtering capabilities far beyond sub-resource filtering in third-party browser vendors' products.
Cool. Nice. I think you can keep that.
Yeah.
And we're also joined by Simeon, who we met earlier from Mozilla. So he will join us. Hey, Simeon. And weirdly enough, they asked me to join the panel as well. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a technical person, but the reason they asked me to join, and I don't have to read that from here, like I know this stuff already. So I've been working at eyeo for about 5 years, and I actually manage some of our larger partnerships. So partnerships with Microsoft, with Amazon, with Yahoo, with Reddit, which is a pretty cool one to manage. So I'm on the business side. So I'm kind of looking at this like LLM stuff, and I'm like, okay, what does this mean for my job? What does it mean for the business? What does it mean for ad filtering? And hopefully everyone has some answers so I can carry on doing my job.
I only have questions.
If I may, I want to jump in real quick to say I'm participating today personally, not on behalf of Mozilla. So I'm not representing Mozilla's point of view on any of these topics.
Well said.
Thank you, James. All right. I actually had a chance to speak at this conference 2 years ago, and in Amsterdam, I think it was. And I remember after the talk, I had some really great conversations with a lot of people, a lot of you guys here, and from really a wide range of perspectives. And I was hoping to do the same again this year. Unfortunately, I have to leave right after this talk, so I will miss the secret event tonight. But then I started thinking about how could I kind of replicate this and try and interact with as many people as possible with the different viewpoints in this short time that I have here today. And so we came up with this format, which is kind of like an open forum, basically, for all of us to join into. So obviously we begin with a panel to kick off the discussion, but then hand things over, ping-ponging back with you guys. So it becomes really interactive, and hopefully I can learn a lot from you and you from us and us from each other. So let's keep it interactive. And if we take like a small step back and think about it, this is kind of almost like a real life Gen AI experiment where, we have connected to a few knowledge bases, all of you here, all of us, and we're going to throw a few prompts at us later and see what kind of responses we get. And click. Yeah. So the topic that we have today is about ad tech and Gen AI. And as a product manager, I'm very keen to stay on top of this space and understand how things are evolving. Basically, it helps me decide where to invest more time in research or in experimentation, and to be able to continue building features and products that will improve the user's online experience based on how their online behavior is also evolving. I'll start by reading out our two prompts to our knowledge base. And I'm actually very happy that also Andre and Natalia's talk earlier today set the stage perfectly for this, because it gives us a lot of background in a very specific use case. And I had a lot of thoughts and questions in my head during that talk, so I hope it did the same for you. So it'll also be good ammunition for this discussion, so to say. Like I said, on the panel today, we have different perspectives. So we have ad blocking, filtering perspective, we have the browser perspective, we have the publisher perspective, we have the personal perspective. And one key perspective we're missing is the advertiser perspective, obviously, but we can loop them in later, these guys. So yeah, let's start with the first question. So what will advertising look like as more and more of these Gen AI tools replace classic search engines and content consumption happens outside of publisher websites? And the second kind of question is, who will be the key players and what are the most visible signs today of what's to come tomorrow? And one thing that's to set the scene is we saw the one use case about search engines and like being inside this chat box with what's it called, blended ads, right? But I also want us in this discussion to maybe think outside of the chat box, because the user is still maybe in a browser or and how will advertisers maybe pivot and shift to show ads to users still, not just as blended content, but maybe other ways? And yeah, what can we do to still keep the user experience a nice one? So yeah, I will throw the question at the panel if anyone has any thoughts, and then we have a mic that we're going to throw around between you guys to please just jump in and share your thoughts. So, who wants to kick things off?
No pressure. Yes.
Or maybe someone also from the crowd. If you have any thoughts about any of these or have experience in this.
I mean, maybe I can just start with a very general kind of thought. And so the way I think about this is it kind of reminds me in a way of when Google started to preview web page content within search results. And what this did is it drove a lot of traffic away from the individual websites, and therefore, of course, ad revenue and page views and impressions. So what I see very clearly with this is that as more and more people rely on these models to get information, to get entertainment, these kind of things, they will be going less and less to publisher sites. They'll be getting less and less opportunities to show ads. And so things like banners, things like pre-roll videos, these kind of things will become obsolete. So definitely that's a trend that I see. And yeah, I think that's one initial kind of thing that I would think.
I'm curious. I feel like the history of ads has shown that when they have more opportunities to integrate content, we continue to see ads. So the presence of integrated marketing in TV shows where, a can of Coca-Cola is going to very conveniently face the camera, that didn't stop commercials between the breaks, right? So do you actually think we're going to end up with fewer pre-roll ads and stuff?
Hopefully. I mean, no, probably not. And the content will be, of course, AI generated as well as the ad itself. So, and it will be personalized to the person. So there's going to be a crazy amount of scale and targeting possibilities with big data and how the LLMs can take care of that. So I was thinking about this earlier as well. So imagine if you have a campaign as an advertiser and you're thinking, how can I convince someone to buy a car, let's say like a Volkswagen? What you could do with LLMs is you could very slowly, over a period of days, weeks, months, slowly gaslight that person into buying a Volkswagen, right? So you'd search for I need to get to this destination. What should I do? And they're like, well, maybe you could take a Volkswagen. They're really fast and they have a nice interior and there's a great color range available as well. And look, you can even get interest-free options. So it wouldn't be as obvious as that, but it could be subtly done over time. And I really, it concerns me a lot actually, because, you can as we saw earlier, these models are trusted, people are trusting the information coming from them. And if it's done in a subtle enough way, they won't even realize they're being advertised to, right?
This raises the question of monopolized interests or concentrated interests versus diversified interests. So this model, the immediate thing that stands out to me is that there needs to be one party, a very predominant party that, let's say, runs a long con on this person, let's say, over a large period of time, without interruptions, I might add, without other car companies and other parties interfering in the flow. So, of course, the prevalent topic that stands out here to me is the monopolization of the advertising source.
Yeah. I mean, I guess whoever can bid the highest, if you ask what are the top 10 cars,
you need to bid the highest, for the future.
Yeah,
you need to cover this guy for a long period of time,
or there's
not
like
just for the next few blinks.
Time to live, like you have this person for the next month.
Yeah,
something like that.
It's a long lease.
Yeah, damn.
You get like when you look for an Uber, you only get drivers with Volkswagen, for example. So you experience being in a Volkswagen.
Are there any advertisers in the room or agencies like starting to take notes? Maybe.
Well, maybe back to the topic of key players, because I've worked with a browser that is introducing or has introduced. I don't know if they're live yet. Ads as overlays, so they are the ad serving, let's say, engine, right? They work with advertisers. They serve their ads over any, whatever, it's a ChatGPT window or if it's a CNN.com window, doesn't matter. They're still going to serve that ad. Have you guys seen this before in the wild, or have you had to deal with it before in any other browser?
You mean that this ad is a part of the browser?
Yes.
Oh, sad.
But that's what I mean. Advertisers will need to now look for other avenues, and it actually opens the door, because there's more competition on the limited ad space that's now available because people are not going to websites, for such, features, if you want to call it a feature.
The more common case that I have seen are affiliate marketing partnerships, a lot of coupons, special offers, discounts shown to the browser using native browser code. Therefore, nobody has really any control over them, but advertisement, not so much. The more interesting thing is that I have never seen statistics being published that implementing such methods actually reduced churn or raised engagement inside a browser. I have seen these statistics for other products, web-based and otherwise apps, but not a browser. So if somebody would have access to such data, would be very interesting to hear about it.
I feel like for this discussion, it's important to note that Facebook has explicitly said, Mark Zuckerberg recently said, I think at the Meta's developer conference, that they are intentionally and consciously going in the direction of generated content in people's feeds. So if you really like videos about sports cars, you're going to start to see AI-generated sports cars. And I think directly in that is an opportunity for Facebook and other ad platforms and content platforms to start integrating Gen AI-based advertisements into directly into the experience. So advertising could be even more subtle and pernicious than it already is.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that websites will start receiving a few less traffic. Not Facebook, but all the news websites, etc. And their popular response was implementing going premium, going subscription model. So many major news websites went this way, and I think the situation will continue to advance that direction. So there will be more and more subscription model websites using the subscription model, but at the same time, the other source of revenue for them would be selling content to AI companies. So because the real human-generated content should be valued more now, since soon.
Rarity,
so since so soon it will be rare. So this could be the next source of revenue. So they may not have ads on their websites, but they will probably do. But anyway, but instead of ads, they go premium and they sell their content.
Is this tied to the point about expenses that you made before? Also, because solely based on advertising, embedded or not, this model is not long-term sustainable.
Yeah, probably they because the consumption goes, the advertising just goes to a different space. So you now consume most of the content on Google.com in generative search, and this is where the advertising will be. And you just don't see what goes on the website where the content comes from.
On the topic of costs, the presentation you gave this morning, Andre, was super interesting. Obviously, we know how much money is being invested, and it's not yet profitable. So there's all this money is being pumped into what is going on to create these models. And let's say everyone has their own device, or they're streaming, or they have audio response, and there's a lot of server bandwidth needed for this. Everyone is doing it 24 hours a day, and they're using LLMs all the time, and then there's advertising kind of pumped into that. Then you need the resources as well to be able to combat this from an ad blocking or an ad filtering perspective, because you also need bandwidth and LLMs to know which is like advertising content and which is advertising, which is actually content. But I was thinking, we're all talking about how this is like not sustainable, how expensive this is going to get. But if you think about like programmatic advertising now, the amount of data, the amount of signals, the amount of like bid requests and auctions and bandwidth that's needed to run all of the programmatic ecosystem online right now would be unimaginable 20 or 30 years ago. Like no one would be able to afford this level of computing. So I kind of think that probably we will be able to scale to a point where the bandwidth is enough, the computing power is enough in years to come. Well, I would hope so anyway. I don't know if Moore's law still exists, but that's something I was wondering about.
Definitely, there will be enough resources. This is like they invest in computing power all the time, and this investment only grow. So why not? It's just the LLMs will be like an addition to all this programmatic stuff that's going on right now. So it doesn't go anywhere. So the ecosystem changes a little bit. So maybe the arrows go not here, but here and there. But they still, it is all still there. All the tracking, all the personalization, all these shadow profiles, it's still there. It will only get worse. Cool, right?
On the cost front, I'm kind of curious, as devices continue to go in the direction of shipping LLM models.
We need to come up with a new acronym.
Yeah. On the cost front, a pretty clear solution from advertisers' point of view is to ship the content and then have a local model actually perform the integration. But the obvious drawback is that gives intermediaries like extensions an opportunity to see the original content and then to revert back to it. There's obviously a disadvantage from the advertiser point of view there, but I wonder if that might still be effective enough and drive down cost enough for the integration of that content that it's still a more viable strategy.
Well, let's have an example. So recently there was a fun story. So Chrome is building this privacy sandbox for several years already, right? So they're saying we will start blocking third-party cookies, etc., etc. And here's a new ecosystem for you instead of what we had before. And they built like a new one. And the interesting thing about it was that they said, let's run the auction right on the user's device, right on inside the browser. So basically make the browser a part of the ad ecosystem, which in my view is controversial, right? But the problem is that the strange thing is that at some point this year, I guess, Chrome kind of comes out and says, Google guys comes out and say, you know what? We thought a little, and we decided to not deprecate third-party cookies. So because rebuilding the whole infrastructure into this absolutely new approach, where half of the things are run locally, is probably harder than migrating to MV3, which is which is kind of the most the hardest thing I ever did. So and participated in. But at the same time, for ad blocking, going for ad blocking, we will not compete on costs. We cannot do that. So ad blocking will go for the local LLMs and will go for the cheapest solution ever, because we're like small and like tiny compared, tiny like squared compared to everyone else.
I can say something towards the original question, maybe. I do feel that in this kind of world where there's a lot of generated content, people might be feel like they're more comfortable sticking to user-generated content, like on Reddit or something like that. But in fact, I think nothing is going to be safe, because I've already seen some examples of services where they offer, they will build Reddit profiles for several months and then start to post organic-looking content that happens to be also advertising something. And that is quite a dangerous thing, and I'm not sure if anyone's prepared to deal with that either yet.
There's another thing that I guess worthy of noting. So LLMs, while they are being educated, naturally they should value some types of content more, some types of content less, and probably user-generated content is the most valuable thing. So they. Some companies already have contracts. For instance, Reddit, it sells their content to the LLM companies so that they could train their models. And what if I assume that it is possible to do some kind of search LLM optimization. If you are like a very tricky company, you can make a subreddit, make lots of fake accounts, make them it's a bad word, like some product there a lot, and discuss somehow kind of discuss it, and this way the LLM will then value this content higher and will therefore value your product higher. This is some kind of the same as search optimization via spam, but a bit more menacing and like manipulative and complicated, but I think it's real. It's a real threat.
Yeah, I mean, it already happens on Reddit, right? You get a lot of people they say shilling like products, right?
I thought that's how Reddit operates. So in general.
Well, I mean, but imagine, like it will be bots basically posting, and then they will be training the LLMs, and then the LLMs will be trained to target these bots who will not be buying products because they're bots. And then everyone that is buying products who's human will basically be targeted and surrounded by information and content and advertising, which is based on this circle of bot traffic, LLMs, and automatically generated advertising content.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not the dead internet theory, I don't know what is. Like, maybe it's already a dead internet. I don't know.
Yeah. So these anti-bot protection are pretty important. But Meta, is it good at it or not? For instance, Facebook.
No,
it's also not good.
No, it's terrible.
Well, it's sad.
Well, we don't work with them, so I can say that.
Oh.
In the case of the circular pattern there, I wonder about the incentives that Reddit has to, even if the content that is being hosted is AI generated, that they would be incentivized to detect it and be able to match it. That way their data set that they're selling is valuable enough for other people to buy.
it's probably a bad incentive. I mean, they have shareholders now, so they have a lot to consider.
Okay, so I'm trying to make an educated wish here, like two of them. So one, I think that like we have these specific ecosphere of sustainable ads. So we may see an appearance of like a certified, for example, like certified, like certification body.
Certified human.
Yeah, certified human. Yeah, certified human content, and also certified that ad was made by a human. Like there was some person like create jobs, and then they can say, okay, it does not like it's environment friendly, doesn't use too much water. So all that can like be like an extra, and those would be like labeled as good ads. Like consuming this ad, you kind of you put like food on the table of someone. Yeah? And the second thing that like spoilers, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. That would be like other modalities, and those are voice-based ads, voice-activated ads, and those are different types of ads because you usually can really interact with them, and I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. And like what is interesting that those ads are they're received differently by users, and they have for now they have noticeably higher click-through rates, and marketeers have noticed that. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. That was a blended ad.
I think that this certified human thing will definitely happen.
Yeah.
New upcoming clauses for acceptable ad standard.
Human acceptable human standard
Needs to be put there by humans.
But I guess if you think about like handmade products, like goods, it's rarer and rarer, right, to have something that is handmade, and it commands like a higher price tag because that thing is handmade. So maybe this will be the same with content as well. You'll have your TikTok feed and your Instagram feed with like loads of auto-generated content, which is somewhat entertaining, but then you could have like a curated, maybe even like a social media app that's like only human content, and it's probably not going to be as good.
At the risk of sounding maybe a bit controversial, I feel like we are blurring the line between what we should be blocking and what maybe the customer did not want us to block. There could be a lot of embedded ads that are loved, and the customer would not want them removed.
That's true.
I feel like we are kind of putting them all in the same basket, saying, "Oh, we need to save the people from this." Maybe they don't need saving from all of this. It's an angle I see often be neglected.
I would like, first of all, I completely agree, and as a loosely relevant thing, I would like to mention. So ad blockers in general, they have a lot of power, so they can choose what's blocked and what's not. And it's really important to stick to the original principle. So, for instance, we block ads. We don't block websites we don't like. We don't block ad websites because we don't like people who run these websites, etc., etc. And since ad blocking is run by people, so by different filters maintainers, it's not always how it's done. And here with this blended ads blocking, we risk even more because basically ad blocker may become some kind of a sensor, and it decides what kind of content, how content is changed and what kind of content is removed. And the amount of manipulations you can do and how you can do them, it's pretty dangerous. So it's very important to be principled and to continue do what you originally wanted to.
Did you want to ask something, Ryan?
Yeah. We're always going to see pre-roll ads. That's not such a statement. like if you look at YouTube 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, you could block YouTube ads with just a network item. It was just literally just network item ads blocked. But now they're using scriptlets to we have to use scriptlets to inject stuff to counter that. So you're finding that it has progressed. Like video insertions have got to a stage where you can't simply just block it with a network item. You have to do some work to get around it, and not only that, they'll keep changing it. So you'll always see evolving, especially for video ads. You'll see evolvements with mid-roll, pre-roll, even I guess post-roll as well. But you always see because they're always also going for the lowest common denominator, which is basically people with not running an ad blocker at all. So, for them, if they weren't none the wiser, they expect to see an ad anyway. But to make it harder for the user, how about we make it part of the video? How about we make this ad as part of the video? And I guess with the AI, they could technically have auto insert whenever they want, basically, which could be another thing.
Yeah, that's actually really, so like the intrusiveness of the ads, and like when I look at the current examples of how they're introducing advertising in LLMs, it's kind of like acceptable ads, right? It's text. It's usually clearly labeled, so it says sponsor.ad, or it should be at least, legally speaking. And then when we talk about this example of maybe they can incorporate advertising like kind of product placement, but like AI is tailoring the video to include some form of suggestive advertising. Again, you're enjoying the content and it's not necessarily intrusive. So maybe it's actually a better way of advertising compared to a banner or a pre-roll ad that interrupts what you're trying to watch. It interrupts the user flow, which is the reason most people download an ad blocker, right? It's because they go on YouTube, they see a pre-roll ad, and they think there must be a better way.
Well, you can even compare. You first of all, I think you're right, and second, I think that product placement, sponsored ads that YouTubers do when they do some kinds of integrations, they earn much more from that than from the YouTube affiliate program. So, and this means that this ad costs more, performs better, so it's better in every way. The only problem is, but it's like certified human for now. When it becomes LLM generated, who knows? So it will be creepy.
Did anyone see the internet historian, the NordVPN ads that he does? I don't know. That's a bit of a niche reference. Yeah. He's doing very good NordVPN advertising, I have to say.
Those AI-generated videos, like with this perfect ads blended in the stream, which we cannot block.
Yeah.
Like, then YouTube should just start to charge those channels to present this content.
But YouTube is who will blend the ad.
No, but it happens already. As we discussed, the blended ads in the machine-generated content, how it's different from those product placements in the video ads. They're just blended in the stream. We cannot block it. It's hard to say when the ad begins and when the ad ends.
Well, consider
we already hear just a different medium.
Why? Just consider the situation. We can block ads blended in the text content with an LLM. When there will be an LLM as powerful enough to generate video, we will have an LLM powerful enough to modify video as well. So probably
exactly. You just quickly download the entire video, recode it, remove the ads.
None of that is necessary. You just need to put timestamps on the video and skip over. No need to modify anything.
Wasn't this already solved for, I think, Twitch?
Sponsor blocks. There's a great,
Twitch, right?
We should. Why we never invited the guy here? There's a huge database of timestamps on videos that can be like removed. But if it's injected in real time, different. I want to inject an ad specifically for Krzysztof, and I will mention something funny. I don't know what you like. And for me, it will be different in a different time.
A more
Yeah, for me, it wouldn't be funny. It will be sad. I like sad ads.
more importantly, if you are ready to take on the pain for your favorite content creators, then you can always list them as a user using sponsor block-like products, which I think gives you a lot of power.
I think this is why these kind of ads today, where the content creator is the one who making the ad because they have the product, people are fine with that. It's a personal kind of thing with the content creator as opposed to the banner or the pre-roll ad, which is very impersonal and more.
Or the 5 unskippable pre-roll ads before that.
But even, to be honest, when I watch YouTube and I get these sponsored ads in the middle, like the organic or native or whatever you want to call it, like from the content creator, it's also disruptive.
Yeah.
But sometimes I also just skip, right? But yeah, it's disruptive but not annoying.
This is also where probably the advertising will change the most. Like in last years, we see more and more ads are being created by the content creators, not by the marketing agencies or advertisers themselves. It's just being delegated to those YouTube.
This is for them to secure a larger margin, though. It's not connected to LLMs. I would wager.
Probably also. Yet you could always what I want to say is that with the rise of AI, when the content of the ad will be auto-generated, what will change for the advertisers, they will have to become no longer a source of content, but a source of knowledge, unique knowledge that can be turned into the ad. And AI will be better than any content creator when it comes to faking emotions, like doing those emotional responses, like convincing people, maybe over time, to get the person to buy something. But the only way advertisers will be able to differentiate from each other is the source of the knowledge they are able to provide. The more details on the product, on their own product, they will be able to provide, the more ways the AI will have to distinguish them from the bland sea of repeated content, because that will be the hardest part of this super scaling of generated content. Like if we as people won't be interested in those bot generated Reddit posts, like we won't be also interested in those generated ads. Like we'll quickly get immune as people get immune to ads in general. So this will be about those little bits of content, knowledge that is different between the products, which will make the difference. And that's, I think, how the entire ad industry will change. The advertisers that will have to, and we do see this already in the product companies. Like product websites back in the day used to be nice pictures, like invoking emotions. Now you really have to write content. SEO ready or whatever reason ready, but you need to have a content. If you don't have a content, a website is considered a scam. Like no one wants to watch this website anymore. If it doesn't provide a value, unique value, it doesn't exist. And AI will only amplify it as the cost of production will go down.
Does anyone else have a question, something they want to say? I can pass the mic around, or further.
Yeah. We all have taken it granted that AI will generate some original content, but we used to see that LLMs making they're hallucinating. For example, your hypothetical LLM might want to sell me a Volkswagen car because it's running on water. Who's going to be responsible for that?
Yeah, I mean, the other more sinister example is obviously political ads as well, right? So using advertising and LLMs to be able to influence people's political persuasion, that to me is one of the scarier things because, yeah, if you can convince someone to buy a Volkswagen, you can convince someone to vote in a certain way as well. And we already see it with social media. We see it with this. Now imagine personalized conversations, maybe with AI-generated avatar, with AI-generated voice, giving you a very calm, argumentation of why you should vote for Trump, for example. You may not listen at first, but over time, maybe it plays a little bit in your sleep as well when you're sleeping. You could be convinced, and people are on social media, like perfectly reasonable people, centrists can be convinced. That stuff is super worrying, I would say. We're really coming up with some positive points today.
You should have a patent on gaslighting ads or something like that. So you seem to be mentioning this gaslighting approach.
but once again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I mean, we are assuming that voting for some people is worse than voting for some others. I don't really think that people who are in charge of blocking ads should not be meddling with that kind of topics, and we should be more staying on more neutral territories and talking about technologies and their evolution, and not so much like turning it into a cautionary tale.
Yeah, that's a fair point. We've at eyeo, it's always been not necessarily been about the content of the ads, but like, the intrusiveness of them, like how big they are, how many ads there are, whether they're animated, these kind of things. So it's not necessarily like, is that a subjectively good ad or not? Is it offensive or anything like this? Obviously, there are block lists in place that are just general across the industry, but it's always been about the size of the ad and how much it interrupts the user flow. So that's an objective, point of view, I guess.
I had a list. This is going back about 10 odd years or so, but I had a list which was a fake news list, and I got a lot of feedback because predominantly it was right leaning, and I got a lot of reviews for it. And I basically canned the idea because I thought, as my political persuasions, obviously, also because you're a person, but also the fact that you're trying to do something good, but you can't be biased. You try to be unbiased, but then also you go into these sites and they're obviously creating fake news, and trying to filter those out. But you couldn't create a reliable list without having some of your bias show as well.
This can be solved, so it's nothing that it probably nothing we can change about this. That's why we should focus on what we are able to do. So this is an unsolvable problem, and if we start trying to change something there, you will just first of all, you will not succeed. Second, you will get like a lot of angry feedback on that. So
yeah, it was sort of more of a proof of concept rather than anything else. But it was sort of like when I started getting feedback, it was, let's say, it was not nice, knowing that people of a certain political persuasion felt attacked, and I guess rightly so, because obviously their favorite website was being blocked. So. Regarding the ad skipping, I was on United for a while. I was traveling to and from London recently, and I was watching. Every time you watch the video of in-screen entertainment, there was like 3 ads, and I was like, I watched the 3 ads, and then I watched another video, and then you watch another, and then new video, the same 3 ads. So I was quite annoyed about it. And I looked over, and there was a 7-year-old girl, and what she was doing was she was just tapping the end, and she was like ad skipping. It's like, oh man, you do me proud. she was literally ad skipping at 7 years old on the screen, just get to the next thing, and it's like, what nice thing is that? Why didn't I just think of just clicking on the end to ad skip on the plane? I was like, wow, this is brilliant. She understood that she didn't like ads at 7 years old, and it was like, you're doing us proud. You're showing the world, even at 7. You dislike these video ads so much that you found this technique of getting right to the end, and it worked well. I mean, like once I saw she did it, I was like, why don't I do it as well? Because there was no ad block on the plane. Though I wish it was. But the fact that she could do it and she was doing it at 7 years old, yes, she was. Yeah, it was a touching moment for someone who inadvertently created her little mini ad block with her finger.
Maybe she was not a part of the target demographic, but you were.
It was some random ads. I can't even remember ads, to be fair, so it didn't really stick with me. But it's just the fact that it happened. It was quite a nice moment, and I was
maybe a little bit relevant from our talk on one of the slides. So we talked about a study with like certified humans that were assessing chatbot with ads. And one of the findings was that subtle ads, so something that you can't say if it's an ad or not an ad, actually works well, and people slowly start to engage with these to ask more about the products that are being subtly advertised. And I was thinking, like nowadays people have this banner blindness thing. So like the girl, everyone hates like regular ads, and they click skip and just don't see them at all. What will happen? Will they ever get this like subtle product placement blindness? Something like, will they be able to detect when it tries to push to advertise something to you against when it's like legitimate mention of something? So is there a possibility that we will learn how to do that? And I actually think that there is.
But don't you think it still subconsciously is there? Like, you read the word Samsung 100 times now. It's, the synapses in your brain in the back is like very strong. Samsung, as opposed. Same with the banners. Like, if you've seen it enough time, the same visual, it's there. Maybe it's not active. Maybe you decided to ignore it. But maybe it's good enough for the advertiser that when it comes, when it's go time and you're in the shop or wherever you're buying things, they have a strong, at least, keyword in your head.
There will be some influence, of course. Something will keep there. Otherwise, why are they buying the banners, for instance? No one clicks them, but the fact that they see the people see them is already enough for the advertiser.
No. You wanted to say?
Yeah, we were talking about the problems of subscription-based models where, like, it's not scalable. One reason I feel it's not scalable because people access a lot of websites, and to pay for each website becomes cumbersome to subscribe to each paywall. So I was wondering if like ad blockers can act as that one point of payment where people pay to the ad blockers and then they distribute a portion of that income to publishers for not showing the ads, and for people who don't pay, then they get to see the ads. How would that kind of...
Why not browsers?
Yeah, browsers can be the other kind of single point of payment.
Isn't this what Brave is somehow trying to do?
I mean, eyeo has tried it too, right? we had a product. It was like an extension, and it's called Flatter, and it basically did the same. It was distributing like premium to publishers based on the amount of time spent on a website. But yeah, it didn't really scale. It was hard to grow adoption for sure.
What are the reasons that you think?
I don't know, Mo. What would you say the reasons Flatter didn't scale?
I'm not sure. I see Vegard there. Wasn't Google Funding Choices also a similar idea? Did that?
All right, this might be slightly controversial, but I genuinely think it doesn't work because here's what happens. Oh wow. Exactly.
So, yeah.
So I don't think it works because here's what happens. First of all, there's always this big question of how much is someone worth? And there aren't that many price discovery mechanisms. One of them is you set your price and people come along and they're willing to pay it or not, and you can experiment. Ads are a pretty effective price discovery mechanism which is it's a marketplace and it's bidding, and so you discover the price. The problem with there's sort of a thing where you unilaterally say, well, I'm going to take the money and then I'm going to distribute it is, and you'll see this with, what happens is you say, okay, here's the price. And then people start paying. Now, if you set the price at whatever, $1 a month, who's most willing to pay $1 a month? People who have a lot of money. So the people who are like, I would pay $500. They're like, well, $1, I'll pay that. Now the people, so those people are cool. So they were worth a lot to advertisers because they have a lot of money, but they weren't willing to pay. I mean, they were willing to pay. So now they see no ads. So then advertisers are like, oh, the most interesting users are gone, right? So now I'm not willing to pay as much for ads. So now the publisher looks at it and they go, okay, but more of my ad revenue disappeared. So now I'm going to have to increase the price, right? And so you double the price. Now, who's still willing to pay? The people who have the most money. And it essentially boils down to eventually there's like you price it for the most valuable user. And this is a simplification. It doesn't really work like this. But in principle, the problem is that you can't price it correctly because, and this has been discussion around YouTube, with premium. And you see they're increasing the price because they make a lot of money out of ads. And eventually they sort of have to price it such, if you sort of look at how much they make from premium versus ads, they make a lot of money from ads, and they have obviously a lot more ads, and they charge more and more for premium. So I think, and that's, you can do it. YouTube is also unique in that it's like 30% of internet traffic, and so no one should be comparing themselves with YouTube because everyone is different. But I think any mechanism of the browser, it doesn't know what to charge, and you can't really price it in aggregate in any case, is my dim view of that approach.
If YouTube is starting with some price point and then letting the industry kind of narrow down to a particular price point by changing, maybe it might take like 10 years down the line to come to that price point, or that price point could be slowly ephemeral, like changing over time.
Yeah, I think also the other thing is that lots of people will say, well, it's not your business, it's my business. I want to set the price. It's my user. And I've tried. I mean, trust me, I've literally tried building it. I can tell you it didn't work. And I wanted to work, by the way. Don't take this as me being, I love the idea, but there are so many companies that have tried. And my conclusion has been that, as I said earlier today, I think the more antagonistic you are, right, you get into this sort of fight, and it's very difficult to get out of that in a good way. And at least from our perspective, we look at it as you need to find a win-win situation. And I think whether or not even the economics work, there's enough people who see it as an imposition and a fight, and it will become antagonistic, and you get into this a fight that the user definitely loses. And so, yeah, I think even if the theory could work, in practice, people feel disempowered, and you lose.
I think like the main reason advertising has become so prevalent is because it's frictionless. Right? It's a frictionless way to generate revenue from a user base. So there's no sign up. There's no conscious decision to pay money. It's just simply, I give you a few seconds of my attention, or a glance or a click, and the content creator can generate revenue from it.
Well, it's frictionless, but I want to point, so given also the audience, look, it's frictionless. It may appear frictionless. It has massive friction. The surveillance capitalism is humongous. It's also exploitative, and people take data that they shouldn't have. And so, it's lucrative by doing, one of my favorite examples is Alfonso, the company that spies on you through your TV and mobile SDKs by just taking screenshots of everything you watch and sending it to advertisers. And I go, yeah, it's really profitable. And I would have never said yes to it if I knew what was going on. So I think also it works because it's out of equilibrium. And obviously, what I was talking about early on is I believe in an equilibrium, and I think we're way over to one side of it, not the user side of it. And that is kind of why there is a need for intervening, because I believe it's not a market that functions well. It functions really well for a small group of companies that make a ton of money. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against making money, and I'm not against, they also deliver a lot of value, but I think the balance is off kilter.
Okay, so one more thing, or I'm thinking about like when we say advertising, but we say okay, annoying, yeah, it stands in the way. But the most annoying part of it is surveillance and tracking. So I don't know how, that's more like an open question, how possible it is, like I don't know, like business wise and technology wise, to decouple advertising and tracking. So, for example, there's maybe like incognito users. Okay, now like it's ad time, but somehow I don't know how they can trust that they're not tracked, and then they can, for example, select, okay, watch that like maybe selected. But and the other thing, like users fighting back. I'm trying because I've heard like some like requests, like I don't want to be, and at times there are cases that I would not want to be an incognito over the internet. I would serve as somebody, for example, as a 30-year-old CTO of so I don't know. So I'm talking about like proxy identities that I can switch, like proxy, like email or something. Like that's open thought, open-ended.
Yeah, I mean, I can say at Brave, I think we're trying to challenge the assumption that advertising requires privacy invasive technology. And so the whole idea behind Brave's in-browser ad system is like, if you turn it on, then that is learning from your behavior and pulling from a ad catalog locally on your device, and not actually sending that data to a server to analyze it. So I think it is possible. It's definitely like one of the more underexplored areas in advertising, but it is something that people at Brave are working very hard on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the key thing is that there is the value exchange. Now, I think you have to realize that if as a user you opt out of any value exchange, at some point something will happen. You know, either you get less content, or either you get ad blocking walls thrown at you, or something. And we obviously understand that if no one made money for creating content other than direct payment, then there would be a lot more requests for direct payment and a lot less content than we used to. So now it's a balance. But at the same time, a shout out to things like Brave, or I know Privacy Sandbox is maybe had a rough time. But if you sort of look at the principles and what it's trying to achieve, I think it's exactly right, which is saying that no, advertisers, I've worked a lot in this industry, on the dark side, maybe some people think, but looking at what advertisers want, they don't tend to care about you. Right? They're not, it's like if you want to buy sneakers, what they are trying to understand is if I spend some money, they have 20 channels they could choose. If I spend money in this channel and I spend $100 or 100 euros, do I get more than $100 or euros out of value of that channel? And, in many countries, like even having individual people's data is problematic. So I would say that, these efforts like Brave or Privacy Sandbox are going in the right direction, which is aggregating data and answering questions in aggregate in, the sort of differential privacy style. I don't see a conflict between making good money. And I think that's what I mean. As a consumer, you can obviously choose to opt in, opt out. And as long as the consequences are commensurate, then I think users should have control. But I don't see a conflict there. And we don't need to have surveillance capitalism for this to work.
And I'd say maybe one other thing, since we're talking about generative AI in general, you can imagine the extreme of this is where you personally train a local model from scratch, and you decide, okay, I want this local model to serve me in this particular way, and I have these preferences, and this model will express those preferences on my behalf. And so you can just set this model free on the internet and say, like, find me the best pair of headphones, and like, tell me what it is, right? That's kind of an advertisement for those headphones, but it's doing it in an informed manner. it's not being compensated for some kind of a biased review necessarily. It might be investigating the post histories of people who are doing these things online. So really, I think it comes down to what kind of a model would you trust with your preferences and your personal data, and where would that model come from, and how can that be distributed in a meaningful, equitable way?
I have a question here. Why did you call that advertisement, though?
Well, it's kind of recommending a product to you, right? And whenever you see a product recommendation online, it's very sketchy. You know, you don't know where it's coming from necessarily.
But that sounds almost like you spent a couple of hours that in this case you don't have, and you narrowed yourself down on a product, and now you're saying you're advertising it to yourself. It's I wouldn't have categorized it as advertisement. It's you have sent an agency out there that you trust to do your will. So does that qualify as advertisement?
Well, I guess imagine what if that model was operated by a third party?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it means you don't trust your own agency. So still not advertisement, in my opinion.
So it's just a question of trust, really.
Okay. I would just argue a little bit with your with what you said, and with what Faggot said. So, in my view, at least in the current economic situation, ads cannot be decoupled from surveillance just because really ultra targeted ads work better. Let's take retargeting. So this is where it stems from and to at the same time. It is much more profitable to advertise my product to a person that has already engaged with my product once than to any other person. Yes, it might be a cohort. It might be some people, but still, in order to identify these cohort, you need to be pretty invasive with tracking. And Brave ads, however relevant they are to the content that I'm reading, it will still be not as effective from just money perspective than these targeted ads.
And by the way, I don't think we disagree. I actually see it though as I think we've ended up in a state where it's quite possible there's too much money being made, as in it's not, as I said, I don't think it's an equilibrium. So my point is not, you cannot preserve status quo, but I also don't think, if you sort of go, how much of that money, we talked about the open web and all the great content, how much of that money actually goes to creating the open web, right? As opposed to, something like share buybacks or whatever, right? So I think you can have all of the content we have online with less profit being made. I think there are, if you sort of look at how economies typically developed, you have people who achieve, outsized profits, and then eventually they tend to return towards some sort of equilibrium. And I think that it's, there is too much data, and you're right, it is very profitable and it'll continue, which is precisely why change is needed. And I don't think people will self-volunteer to make less money, which is why, as I said, I think there's a need for intervention and taking control.
I think that's a quote of the day. It's possible we're making too much money.
Someone is making too much money.
Yeah, I'll say ultra targeted advertising is still possible in a private way, as long as the data is not leaving your device.
This is what's going on with Privacy Sandbox. They're trying to do that, but the whole ecosystem is designed differently. It's designed to have an auction. It's designed to have data supply platform that is decoupled from the actually showing the ad. And this whole it's a completely revolutionary change of the ecosystem, which is simply not. It's like a billion times of MV3 releases, so it's too complicated to do.
But isn't it what Apple did with third-party cookies? I mean, if Chrome has obviously been trying stuff, and they're sort of being told to go both left and right at the same time. But it's sort of, it's not that it's technically impossible. You're saying the incentives aren't there. So I think if I were to rephrase what you're saying, but I sort of agree, is it certainly won't just happen on its own.
Yeah, if one party kind of does something, then the ecosystem will have to adapt and lose a shit ton of money in the process. Just what happened with Apple and Facebook.
But actually, if you think about this scenario, if it's sort of the prisoner's dilemma problem, if you go and do the right thing and you're in the minority, in prisoner's dilemma, you get screwed. Whereas if, theoretically speaking, if all tracking disappeared overnight, it just somehow became impossible, then would advertisers go, right, I'm just going to sit on my money now? No. They spend the money on the thing that has the highest ROI. Now, clearly, the open web or apps or any particular channel is not their only thing, but linear TV hours are going down. Right? They're going to have to spend their money. And historically, the advertising budgets go one way. They go up. They have dips occasionally in recessions, but they spend the money. So what I actually think would happen is if all tracking disappeared, they would go to contextual because they would say, well, I have no other way of spending the money. Now, you're right. If someone does it, and we've seen this with Safari, advertising money has shifted away from Safari because there's less tracking, because you can still do it in other places. But I'm just in this crowd, right? If everyone had an ad blocker and if you couldn't target anyone, then things would start shifting. Now, there are sort of these threshold or watershed moments. What does it take to get there? That's an interesting question. And I agree we're not there, but I don't agree that it's impossible. I think that the incentives are strongly aligned with things staying the way they are. And unless something intervenes, it won't change. But
unless something split, right? So into several parts.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe just looking at the time, I think.
Yeah, I think we got to wrap things up. All right. Well, thank you everyone for this very interesting talk. Thanks for participating. Thank you for the guest appearance, Vegard. That was very timely.
Having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Good. I think we have a next session coming up. Unless we have a break. No, one more session. Oh, thanks.